There are various ways that you can go about finding your first position as a brand new RN. Some websites, such as Health Force Ontario and the RNAO, show you available positions, but you have to remember that not all jobs will be advertised on such websites. It can be very helpful to scan the website of the healthcare setting where you want to work, as you will often find openings advertised on these sites. Word of mouth is another way that you can learn about an opening that might be a fit for you, so networking is important. For example, nurses who work within your final practicum might encourage you to apply for an upcoming position, or a friend might tell you about a job that's becoming available where they work. See the Donner and Wheeler reference for some useful ideas about networking. Don't be afraid to use any or all sources to help you uncover potential jobs, and don't be scared to apply to a job even if you think you are not ready to be an RN. Just make sure that the position is open to new graduates and that you don't need 2 to 3 years of experience or a specialty certificate to be eligible. That kind of information is always noted in the position advertisement, so you need to pay close attention to the language in the advertisement. Something that is labeled as a requirement means that the successful applicant must meet this criterion. When you see a term such as preferred, it normally means that if two applicants are similar, but one meets the preferred criterion and the other does not, then the position will be given to the nurse who met the criterion. Regardless of how you find a potential position, you will need to market yourself if you are to be successful in obtaining any position. You must be able to clearly identify your professional and personal qualities as well as your expertise, so you can persuade a prospective employer that you are the best person for the position. 3 aspects of marketing are critically important to you as a soon-to-be RN, and they are your resume, your cover letter for each specific position, and your online presence. Resume writing. You may already have a resume, and you may have looked at my CV on our Moodle site and wondered why your resume has a different layout from my CV. One of the first things you need to understand is that a resume and a CV have a different purpose. A resume should focus on your education, professional background, and accomplishments in a 2 to 3 page snapshot of your career to date. On the other hand, a CV is a much more detailed and describes professional and academic interests and accomplishments over your career lifetime. I would use my CV if I am applying for research grants or some kind of academic appointment. But I often have to also submit a resume to make it easier for the evaluator to see the highlights of my career. You need a resume at this point in your career. To develop an effective resume, you will need to spend time and effort to include all of the necessary information in a format that best showcases your skills and attributes. Your resume should give the reader an immediate sense of what they would be getting if they hire you. Therefore, you need to customize your resume for each position that you apply to so that the reader can quickly see how well you fit that specific position. To make these customizations, you will need to first collect some data about the setting and the position. It is likely that you will need to make multiple versions of your resume if you are applying to different positions. Don't forget to consider what skills and experience you already have that may be transferable to a new position. 3 main formats are used for resumes: chronological, functional, and combined. As a nursing student and soon to be a newly graduated RN, you should likely choose to use the reversed chronological format because you lack experience in nursing. It may be tempting to consider a functional resume, but this type of resume can be difficult to actually complete in an effective way. You can still include your skills, etc. in a chronological resume. As you will learn from the material in the URLs that I provided for resume writing, there is a science but also an art to writing resumes. No matter which type of format you choose, make sure that you remain consistent, logical, and clear throughout. Don't change fonts or formats of headings partway through. Don't jump from a chronological to a functional format partway through. Mistakes such as these errors will probably mean that your resume is ignored and you don't even get an interview. So your cover letter. You always have to make your application stand out by submitting an excellent cover letter along with your resume. Cover letters should be succinct and clear. They must not be more than a single page in length, otherwise they may not be read all the way through. Attention to detail and following the instructions from the employer are extremely important. An applicant who doesn't pay attention to details or who doesn't do as required will be seen as someone who should not be hired. So your cover letter can easily be the deciding factor in whether or not your application is looked at more carefully. Many organizations only accept electronic applications nowadays, and some use applicant tracking software or resume reading robots to screen out applications. So you need to make sure that you pay close attention to the keywords listed in the job description, then use those keywords in your cover letter if and only if they apply to you. Otherwise, you may pass the screening but not be called for an interview because the employer is upset that they can't find evidence in your resume to support your claims. Make sure that you clearly identify the position you're applying for and also be clear about your enthusiasm for the role and setting. Briefly describe your relevant background, so your key achievements, skills, etc. that make you an excellent fit for the position. Don't just repeat details from your resume. Instead, provide a specific story or anecdote that clearly shows your fit for the role. Finish by recapping why you're applying for the position as well as what makes you a good fit. Interviews. Most nursing positions require an in-person interview, though the interview could also be via technology such as Zoom or Skype. Usually, at least the nurse manager of the relevant unit and someone from the Human Resources Department will be present. If you are called for an interview, then it means you've passed the screening stage but still have work to do. The job interview isn't just for the employer who is trying to figure out if you are the right fit for their organization. Rather, the job interview is two-sided. So not only do you have to market yourself as the best person for the job, but you also need to take the opportunity to ask your own questions to find out more about the organization and the position so you can decide if it's the right fit for you. In my experience, interviewees who don't have questions to ask often come across as not too interested in the position and/or the organization. Employers want enthusiastic and curious nursing staff, so make sure you prepare yourself for this important part of the interview. Preparation is key. The interview is a time to sell yourself, to make the interviewer want to hire you, so be ready to talk about what you will bring to the organization and specifically to this position. You could be asked clinically focused questions that are related to your unit you hope to work on. For example, what are the signs and symptoms of a myocardial infarction? But you will also be asked broader questions that are trying to uncover how you might function within the unit. You need to consider the types of questions you might be asked and how you would respond. Thinking about potential responses ahead of time can be really helpful when you are in the middle of the interview and are feeling a bit anxious. Expect to get asked questions about your strengths and your weaknesses or your area for improvement. Use such questions as opportunities to turn a weakness into a positive. For example, if you have a tendency to take your time in doing things, which could be an area for improvement, then make sure you also identify how it means you can then pay attention to detail to ensure you provide excellent care. You might be asked to tell a story about how you showed a particular skill or attribute to help determine your softer skills. For example, tell me about a time when you demonstrated cultural competence, or describe how you handled a challenging situation in your clinical experiences. Asking you to tell a story or describe a situation is a very common way that interviewers use to learn more about you. Not only what you say, but also how you engage with answering the question is important. For example, are you hesitant to answer? Do you stumble with your answer? Or are you thoughtful and clear in how you respond? Expect, too, to be given a scenario and have to explain how you would act if you were faced with the scenario. For example, you are partway through your shift when you realize you didn't give one of your patients their medication on time. What do you do? Through your manner, so the way in which you engage with the interviewers and the answers themselves, you need to show that you have the knowledge, skills, and abilities that are needed in this position. As a new RN, you might feel as if you need to downplay your knowledge, etc. And to some extent, you do, because coming across as arrogant or a know-it-all will not get you the job. But you also have to be positive and be clear about your willingness to learn and to put time and effort into being the best nurse you can be. The softer skills, such as being a team player, are very important, and you could use examples from your student experiences to show how you play well with others or how you are respectful of others. If you don't show these softer skills, then you may be viewed as not fitting the setting. If the interview goes well, then the people you have identified as your references will likely receive an email or a phone call so they can provide a reference. It is good practice to let your referees know when you are going for an interview so they are aware that they might be contacted. The turnaround time for these references is usually very short, so I personally find it very helpful to know to expect one. I can also confirm with you then about the best way for a prospective employer to contact me at a particular time. Professional online presence. Creating and maintaining social networks has become a way of life for many people, but you need to be aware of your online footprints, including posts you might make on discussion forums, texts in a group chat, or pictures you post on Facegram or Instagram. The adage that nothing ever dies on the internet has a lot of truth in it. Even things you have deleted can often be found by others who have a little technological savvy. Using private versus public settings can help to some extent, but it doesn't stop many of the companies that are hired specifically to find out things about prospective hires. Many employers now routinely conduct online searches before they hire new employees. That picture of you happy as can be but very drunk might give such a bad impression that you lose the job. It is important to realize that the context of messages you had written or pictures you had posted is missing for someone who goes looking for your information, and so something can look really bad to an outsider. Do a search of your own name on popular search engines. You might be surprised at what comes up. Remember that if you can find information, then potential employers and professional colleagues can likely find it too. At a minimum, you should clean up your online presence before you graduate and definitely before you start applying for jobs. You might also consider changing how you engage in social media. Perhaps keep your public presence only to sites that are considered to be professional, such as LinkedIn. Whatever you do, it is always better to be in as much control as possible of the information about you that is out there on the internet. Don't let something stupid when you were younger derail your plans for your nursing career. So our week 4 Zoom meeting is going to take place on Tuesday, October the 6th from 3 to 4, and we'll review through discussion the content that's been discussed in week 4.